We're going to begin by setting the tone with a sound. We're going to do something called toning, okay? We're going to tone one word 3 times. And the word that we are going to tone, I'm still waiting for that download, is Maria. Maria. Maria is a word that is actually the word for Lord in the Aramaic. A little bit of information is that Yeshua never said the word Lord. I know that absolutely because Lord is actually a 15th century feudal English term, and it didn't exist in the 1st century. And one of the things we don't realize, being in an English-speaking country, or even actually a lot of other countries that learned from mostly the King James or the Tyndale, the Coverdale, or Geneva, or those Bibles in the 15th, 16th, 17th centuries, we don't realize that our relationship with Jesus and the words and the story have nothing to do with 1st century Judea or Galilee. It has everything to do with right around a little bit after the Middle Ages in England. So we're not relating with what was actually there, we're relating with something that's 1,500 years old or newer than that. Something we don't think about. This word Maria, the word Maria, we would know that word. It's an Aramaic word, and it doesn't mean Lord in the way that we think of Lord, which would be someone who owns land. What it actually means is one who shines an obvious spiritual light. It also doesn't mean something like a master that's somehow better than you. What it actually meant in its essence was just someone who they walk into the room or into the village and there's a light that you can perceive. Okay? So the sound we're going to make is Maria. Let me tone that for you so you know what I mean by tone. We're going to do it 3 times. It's going to sound like this. Just listen the first time. To be in perfect pitch with me. It doesn't have to be in harmony or sound like the Andrews sisters. Just be open and let it come from a deep place in your heart, okay? We're going to do Maria 3 times, okay? Physically, okay? How do you feel right now, just from doing that? I wouldn't even have had to have told you what that word was or what it meant, and you'd still feel that. That's one thing that's unique about Semitic languages, Aramaic, Hebrew, and Arabic, as well as Lakota, Tiwa, Pueblo, Navajo, Lakota, Mayan, Yucatec. There's certain languages that are based on vibration. And this isn't some new agey sort of thing that somebody made up, which a lot of stuff seems to be in the last 20 years, but it actually literally, they believed, and I believe, that when you make each sound that comprises a word, each of those sounds in Aramaic actually had a specific meaning. Ah, u, ta, ri, ra. Each sound meant something, and they would actually stack the sounds together to create words, and it was like a compound of all of those experiences within one word. Unlike English, which is a hodgepodge of dozens of different languages, and the sounds actually don't mean anything. Some of the sounds are there of what was in Aramaic, but they don't have that vibrational feel that they have now. I want to open by, let's just say, prepping the path. I'm going to talk about some subjects. I'm going to hint around to a few things during the service. This afternoon, which is at what time? 1:30 to 3:30. I'm going to hit some subjects that are incredibly challenging But as a race, over the next 10 years or so, they're going to become much more commonplace. I know that sounds very elusive, and it's meant to be. I'll hit on that subject a couple of times during the service as well. I just want to read a passage from, if I could pick 5 books of my entire life that were absolutely essential, that I would not do away with, this is one of them. I've got this on my table. The Modern Christian Mystic, Finding the Unitive Presence of God, from Albert LaChance. Albert is a collaborator of mine. We're actually writing a 4-book series for Random House North Atlantic right now. He's on my DVD with me. He's on a couple of my CD programs. We're working on more recordings now. When Albert and I, it's an egoless relationship, and when we get together, the sum is much greater than the 2 parts, to the point where he'll like pick me up from the airport, and within 30 seconds we're both either crying or laughing our heads off. And it goes from deeply spiritual, profound, to absolutely raunchy, filthy, I mean, like in half of a sentence. And it's just open, and there's no judgment whatsoever. It's just a completely open relationship, which actually has to do with what I'm going to read. He says here, authentic spirituality can be summed up in one word. What would that word be? There's no correct answer here, but anybody want to guess?
Peace.
Peace?
Yes.
Love.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes, it's a great word.
Yes.
I've never heard someone say that. That's awesome. What was the other? I heard another one.
Joy.
Joy, love, anything else?
Freedom.
Freedom. Anything else? They're all an aspect of the word that he chose. And what he says is, authentic spirituality can be summed up in one word: surrender. Breathe into that. If you've got a problem with the word surrender, understand the problem's not with the word. If you're thinking about it in military terms, maybe it doesn't sound like it works too well. What that word surrender really means is to be open. And every single word that was said here is an aspect of that. I'm going to read a little more. Surrender is letting go of what we know in order to be in touch with the source of knowing itself. We let go of what we think in order that a mind greater than our own might think within us. We let go of what we feel in order to feel the sentience of the whole. Sentience is a word that means like the empathetic vibration, the resonance of the whole being. We allow our instincts to inform us in our depth, to signal truth to our feelings and thoughts. Surrender allows the human brain, itself a creation of consciousness, to become the vehicle of higher and higher states of consciousness. Each time we surrender the mind with which we think, we inherit a higher mind with which to think. He's talking about being open, okay? In the first beatitude, I'm laying this base with the subject matter that I'm going to be sharing with you, but in the first beatitude where it says poor in spirit, that word that was translated as poor in Greek, they didn't actually have a word for that word in Greek, going from Aramaic to Greek. Whether it was spoken in Aramaic and then to Greek, or written in Aramaic then to Greek, it was sourced in Greek, we know that, or sourced in Aramaic. A lot of Greek scholars would have smiled when they heard that sourced in Greek part. Poor is not wrong. Poor is essentially not a good translation of what that word meant. Such as, let's say that I've got a wallet that had $6,000 in it, and I've just come to America and my country is in civil war. All of my family and friends were killed. And I'm here in America, I've got $6,000, and I found an apartment, but I had to put down $4,000 of my I'm going to have to put down $4,000 of my $6,000 first thing in the morning on that apartment, okay? I don't have a job yet. I have no means of income. I know no one in America, and I don't speak much English. And let's say that I'm standing in New York City at 2 a.m. and someone comes and grabs the $6,000 out of my wallet. And all of a sudden, I don't have it anymore. What could you call me? I'm what?
Poor.
Poor. You can say I'm a blithering idiot too, but it's not the point of what I'm meaning. What that word actually means in Aramaic is something a little bit different than that. Not poor as in lacking, but rather, and you can even hear, if it said, blessed are those who feel poor in spirit, I could maybe tolerate that. But there's no way that a being such as Yeshua would have said, blessed are those who are poor in spirit, because there is no poverty in spirit. And if you've got eyes to see, you look at that and you look at it in the Greek and you go, well, that's just wrong. It's incorrect. Aramaic's a little different. Let's say that I've got $6,000 in my wallet and I take the $6,000 out and I put it in a pocket in front of my heart. What could you say about the wallet? It's what?
Empty.
It's empty, which is what that word meant in Aramaic. In other words, it's empty as in open rather than poor as in lacking. And that's what I'm asking you to be for just the next few minutes, whether you're able to come this afternoon or not. I'm going to start a few subjects that I'm not going to quite complete in the talk, okay? And that's intentional. I'm not trying to cut someone out, but it's more a matter of time. I want to read a few things to you, though. About a woman, Mary Magdalene. The entire Jesus story, a lot of people don't realize, is in the process of what right now is a huge tectonic shift. Not only the Jesus story, but all religion is in a huge tectonic shift. And it's just barely started, okay? It's sort of pulled forth books like The Death of Religion from Joseph Chilton Pearce, which is an incredible book. What I'm doing this afternoon is called The Jesus Story, Questioning the Unquestionable. And there's two aspects of unquestionable. One, you don't question it because it's true, right? And then the other is you're not allowed to question it, because then you're called a heretic. And I said it in this room before. Does anybody know what heretic means? It's actually a Greek word. It's an ancient Greek word. The Greek word is heresis, which means choice. Heretic meant one who made a choice, one who makes a choice. Rather than falling into the structure of the religion, which is what I'm going to talk about this afternoon, they actually make a conscious choice. Okay? You weren't allowed to do that. This tectonic shift is actually going to be more challenging than a lot of people can even imagine. I'm going to hint at, like I said, I'll hint at a few things without really completing them until this afternoon because of the time. But what we know about the Jesus story from a scholarly and research aspect has been known for decades and in some cases hundreds of years, such as Paul's letters. Half of Paul's letters in the Holy Bible are forgeries from the late 2nd century. We know that. They've known for hundreds of years. Nobody talks about it. It's starting to be talked about now, okay? One of the things that I've met a lot of Mary Magdalenes on the road. I meet so many people that tell me they were Mary Magdalene in a past life. Which is great because Timothy Freak, Peter Gandy, Albert LaChance, all these people that are sort of cohorts of mine, they've met lots of Mary Magdalenes too. Mariam Magdalita is her name in Aramaic. Maria was that word for Lord. If you put an M sound on the end, Mariam, that was actually her name. She was the one who shines the obvious spiritual light. She was the feminine essence. And the word Magdalita, Magdala, a lot of scholars and archaeologists and even anthropologists have tried to find a town that was purported to be on the edge of the Sea of Galilee called Magdala. And as of yet, it still hasn't been found. They had ideas because of what's written in the Bible of where it was located, but when they go to those locations, there's nothing there. Magdalita is a word in Aramaic that means ascended. It means fortress or a tower of strength. Okay? In other words, Mariam Magdalita was not a woman from a town named Magdala, most likely, but rather it was speaking about someone who was an obvious spiritual light, and in that feminine essence was a tower of strength for everyone around them. That's what Magdalita meant. Question, and I know you're going to jump to Mary because I've been talking about her, so I'm going to ask the question in a different way. In standard Christianity, who were Yeshua's closest companions in fundamentalist Christianity? Mary wasn't. Mary was shoved off to the side. Peter. Somebody said meter. Meter. Peter. Where did Peter come from? I heard Matthew and Peter and meter came up. He didn't know about meter. He was the 13th. Thomas. What's funny is, like, we know of, like, the Gospel of Thomas. Thomas wasn't an actual, people confuse that with, like, Thomas the disciple. Thomas actually in Aramaic means twin. The word's didymus in Greek. It means twin. What that means is it's the Jesus twin, which means that there's, like, the Jesus teachings we're used to, and then there's another Jesus that was sort of right there parallel to the one we're familiar with, that existed literally at the same time, that was a much deeper message and meaning. So when you hear about the Gospel of Thomas, what that was the parallel message to the Jesus that we're aware of. If you actually look at the documents we have, it was two people. It was not Peter. And I say that because in standard Christianity it was Peter. Peter was absolutely clueless. Peter was the human ego, the pain body that Eckhart Tolle talks about exemplified. He had no clue about anything that was happening around him. None. And you can actually look at lots of things and you'll see that. If you look at the two closest companions, according to the research, we have Mary Magdalene, very much removed, and Judas. What's the fourth gospel in the New Testament? Gospel of John. It was originally called the Gospel of the Beloved Disciple, and it was not about John. It was about Mary Magdalene. Ouch. See, there's things that I've been hinting at for 10 years in my work, but what was happening is I wanted to make sure that what I was saying was a bit more universal, so a lot of people didn't run for the hills. And I just got to the point now where if you got to run for the hills, run, because I can't keep sort of slowing down and waiting for people to catch up anymore. There's people that are already doing that. That's great. Let it happen. I want to read some quotes here, actually. Let me read a little, and I'm going to expand on this more in this afternoon. This is from the Gospel of Philip. So, it says, the companion Mary Magdalene, whom he loved more than all of the other disciples, and he used to kiss her often on the mouth. The rest of the disciples, they said to him, why do you love her more than all of us? The Savior answered and said to them, why do I not love you like her? When a blind man and one who sees are both together in darkness, they are no different from one another. When the light comes, then he who sees will see the light, and he who is blind will remain in darkness. The subject matter that I'm going to talk about today, and that's going to be happening over the next several years in my work, there's going to be people that are going to be able to hear it because they'll be open, and there's other people that are going to go, oh, I can't do that, and that's okay. But there is going to be certain ones that are open. And my intent is not in creating an absolute, another new idea, but rather just to put a question mark above your head and have you doubting, not so much doubting, but questioning certain things. Okay? If the woman had not separated from the man, she should not die with the man. His separation became the beginning of death. Because this, Christ came to repair the separation, which was from the beginning, and again unite the two, to give life to those who died as a result of the separation and unite them. But the woman is united to her husband in the bridal chamber. Let me pause for a second. What the bridal chamber is, it's that space in your consciousness that's open. It's free of ideas, it's free of ideologies, it's free of beliefs. It's just open to whatever's happening, okay? Indeed, those who have united in the bridal chamber will no longer be separated. Thus Eve separated from Adam because it was not in the bridal chamber that she united with him. What that's saying in terms of Gnostic wisdom is that the fall of man, that at Adam and Eve and the separation, they're naked in the garden, they're not ashamed, and here's God, but then all of a sudden they bite from the apple and they're naked and they are ashamed and they have to cover up. That was something that was a separation where it was originally just I, and then it became I am, you are, God is. Which is how many? 3. And it wasn't something that was done consciously, and some of this might be going over your head, that's okay, tune into the energy. Something that wasn't done in a conscious way, but actually it's like we fell into unconsciousness. There's a quote from Arthur Young where he says, the fall of man is actually confirmed by quantum physics by the same process for which light first precipitates or condenses into matter, losing a degree of freedom in exchange for permanence. In other words, light, which is everywhereness, to becoming physical matter, which is now here-ness. And then we focus so much on the now here-ness that we forget about our essence, which is light. How many lights am I holding? How many lights? It's not a trick question.
One.
It's funny, it almost looks like chaos, doesn't it? But yet everything, there you go, perfect. All of these lights, as chaotic as they look, are all a manifestation of one light that's being prismatically refracted. Alan Watt said that we are the universe peering back into the universe from billions of points of view, and they all return back to the one from which they never in truth left. We're still focusing on all the manifestations rather than the light itself. Just as a little bit of a precursor to this afternoon. Paul was a man. Paul was an actual man. Paul was not a fundamentalist Christian. Paul was a Gnostic. What that means is that Paul was someone who was looking for a direct, he was sharing insights into a direct experience that we all have within us. In the late 2nd century, the Paul teachings were mangled, retranslated, and a lot were forged in his name, including that one about homosexuality. He didn't write it. It came over 100 years after his death that came into play. Okay? That's something to think of. We actually have some really early copies of Paul's letters. We have a lot of historians who spoke of Paul and all the traveling that he did. Just a side question. How many historians, documentarians, religious figures, anyone at the time of Yeshua wrote about him? How many? Just take a stab. That wrote about Jesus.
None.
0. Not one. We have not one single text that references him as a person. What we do have is lots of texts that reference an idea or an archetype, or what today would be called a myth. Challenging, huh? I'm going to talk more about that this afternoon. Part of that myth, or part of that archetype, I should say, was an essence called Mary. Okay? There were 3 Marys. There was the Virgin Mary, there was Mary the sister, and there was Mary Magdalene. Okay? In Coptic spirituality, there was one Mary, and I'll talk about that this afternoon, such as Horus, born in 3000 BC, of the Virgin Isis Mary. And there's more to his story that makes your jaw hit the floor, because it's the exact backstory of Jesus. Oh, it's the same as Attis. It's very similar to Osiris. It's very similar to Krishna and Dionysus. Interesting. I just want to read you a little bit here from the Gospel of Mary, which is also known as the Gospel of Mary Magdalene. We hear a lot about adultery, okay, and here's a quote. It says, "There is no sin, but it is you who make sin when you do the things that are like the nature of adultery, which is called sin." Sin is an archery term, chata in Aramaic. It means miss the mark. Adultery, when you think adultery, what are you thinking about? You're thinking about a physical human relationship and someone cheats on someone. Do you know what adultery meant in these teachings? Adultery meant that rather than connecting in with the feminine essence, that feminine internal experiential essence of a teaching or of life itself, you start focusing on the little dots, and you start focusing on the religions, and you start focusing on people and what people did before you, and all these physical manifestations, rather than realizing that what you're looking for is what is looking. It's you that you're looking for. It's you at your highest openness of awakening that you're seeking. You already are what you're looking for. I want to read a couple more pieces here. Peter said to Mary, "Sister, we know that the Savior loved you more than any other woman. Tell us the words of the Savior which you remember, which you know, but we do not, nor have we heard them." but I'm going to jump forward here. It says, when the soul had overcome the third power, it went upwards and saw the fourth power, which took 7 forms. 7. The first form is darkness. The root chakra, closed. The second is desire, which is the second chakra when it's running amok, out of control. The third is ignorance, not following your gut. The fourth is the exhilaration of death. What beats out of your chest when you face death? Like, let's say a truck, you're doing 80 miles an hour down the highway and someone pulls out right in front of you. What beats out of your chest? The sixth is the foolish wisdom of the flesh. Does anybody know what the word sarcasm means? It comes from the Latin root sarx. Sarx means to cut, rip, or tear flesh. I just went back to New Jersey to see family, and one of the interesting things about New Jersey, that's where I lived for the first 21 years of my life, is that sarcasm is like routine. And it's always done with a grin. And it's a way of being able to lacerate and tear down everyone around you, so long as you do it with a smile, because I'm just kidding. You understand what I'm saying? And how do we do that? We do it with our voice, with our words. The sixth is the foolish wisdom of the flesh, which of course is the third eye, closed down. And the seventh is hostility and wrathful wisdom, which is the crown chakra, the openness. Remember I said open, surrender, empty? When the crown is closed down, all that energy recirculates back into the system and it has to find a way out. And it finds its way out through intense desire. It finds its way out through doing anything that makes your heart beat out of your chest because it makes you feel alive. It comes out through sarcasm. It comes out through ignorance and not following your gut. It comes out through not seeing anything clearly in your life. Do you understand what I'm saying? Move forward again. I'm giving you a completely different sort of frame of Mary. It says here, all these different teachings. When Mary said this, she fell silent, since it was to this point that the Savior had spoken with her. But Andrew answered and said to the brethren, say what you wish about what she has said. I, at least, do not believe that the Savior said this. For certainly these teachings are strange ideas. That was Andrew. Peter, the big dog, right, answered and spoke concerning these same things. He questioned them about the Savior. Did he really speak privately with a woman and not openly to us? Are we to all turn about and listen to her? Did he prefer her to us? Then Mary wept and said to Peter, my brother Peter, what do you think? Do you think that I have thought this up myself in my heart, or that I am lying about the Savior? Levi answered to Peter and said, Peter, you have always been hot-tempered. Now I see you contending against the woman like the adversaries. Adversary is a word in Aramaic that means a being divided against itself. Adversaries aren't people out there. What that means is someone who is divided in their own consciousness, a being divided against itself. The good you and the bad you. Do you understand what I'm saying? I've got these great things about myself that I love, and then I've got these things that I don't. And then I'm trying not to look at the things that I don't like. But when you try not to think about something, what happens? In other words, don't think about a pink elephant. No pink elephants. No pink elephant. I don't want you to think about a pink elephant. You had no choice in that matter. The only way you could have a choice in that matter is if you didn't know what pink was and you didn't know what elephant was. If you didn't have the frame of reference. Otherwise, I can say whatever I want. Don't think about Michael Jackson. Who are you not thinking about? Do you understand what I'm saying? And when you've got those aspects of your life where you're trying to push something off and say that, I don't want that in my life, you're actually putting more kinetic energy into it, and you divide. And the more you divide and try to push the other way, the more turmoil you're in. And the meaning was a being divided against itself. It was called Satana in Aramaic. The actual outside Satan didn't come for hundreds of years, the one that existed out there. In his teachings, he was talking about a duality of being. But if the Savior made her worthy, who indeed are you to reject her? Surely the Savior knows her very well. That is why he loved her more than us. Rather, let us be ashamed and, it says here, put on the perfect man. The word doesn't really mean put on, essentially it does. It means to put on the mask of the perfect man, which is the opposite of what Jesus was saying in truth. And separate as he commanded us and preach the gospel, not laying down any other rule or law beyond what the Savior said. And when they heard this, they began to go forth and to proclaim and to preach. You know what Peter was? Peter was the ego. That's why Yeshua loved her, the feminine essence, more than the ego. And the feminine essence was what was removed from the teachings. And what's happening now is that you've got something that was so... Yeshua's teachings, those teachings were 100% completely feminine. What that means is that there are ways of being. There were perceptions. They were spiritual experiences. They were direct experiences. They were Gnostic. They were mystical, which means direct experience. They weren't do this and don't do that. How do you know if you're not living those teachings? If you can judge someone else, you're not living them. If you can look at someone and say, oh, well, the way they live, the way they believe, that's not right. Because there's no one out there, is my point. And I'm going to talk about that in a deeply profound way this afternoon. The idea that there is a man named Yeshua that walked, or the idea that you are a person who walks the earth, is not true in any way whatsoever, in any shape or form. Because there's only one being, and there's only one light. We were even told to turn away from that light. As an example, the light of sun, the sun in ancient Aramaic was equivalent to the light of God. What happens when you move close to the light of the sun? You what? You burn. Now some people are going to have a problem answering this question. What happens when you move close to the light of God? You can say it. You burn. Why? There's something in you that somehow believes that it's not that light. Yet that light is all that exists. We're looking at the dots, and we're missing the point that it's all coming from one source, which is what you are and who you are, beyond the body. And what's actually written in the Jesus story in Aramaic is much greater than anything about a man who walks the earth. It's deeper, it's more challenging, it's more profound, and it's also incredibly disorienting when you tell people this person that you've believed in for 2,000 years wasn't actually a person, but was rather an archetypical idea that was a reflection of dozens and dozens of those ideas that went back thousands of years before his lifetime. In America, that's a big deal, because the politics, the economy, and the religion, they're all wrapped up together. Sinclair Lewis said, when fascism comes to America, it will be wrapped in the flag and carrying a cross. Ouch. It's funny, because what'll happen, like it said here, if two people are in darkness, no one can see anything. When the light comes, some are going to be open to it, and some are going to close down. The second coming is us. The second coming is our own consciousness. It has nothing to do with a person. As a matter of fact, that was a forgery. Oops. Sorry. What's the first coming?
No, that was the forgery.
No, well, I'm saying that, well, the first coming was the creation of the cosmos. The second is us waking up to that we are the cosmos. Yeshua was a great way shower in that way. Now, I'm not, like I said, I'm bringing it to a close. I'm not asking you to believe what I'm telling you. What I'm asking you to do is try just putting a question mark above your head for a while and be open. Because a huge tectonic shift is in place. Not many people are talking about it. Lots of people in theological academies, seminaries, etc. have been knowing these things for decades. Some scholars have known a lot of this stuff for hundreds of years, but they won't talk about it. People are starting to talk about it. Yeah, exactly. So what I'm going to do is invite you to this afternoon. It's 1:30 to 3:30 precisely. We'll be done at 3:30 because I have another event tonight. What I'm going to just do is just lay out some research of what we actually have. In the first half, it's going to be more about the teachings that are right beneath our nose that we've never noticed. There's errors that are right under your nose that you don't have to know anything about the Bible or anything scholarly. They're right there under sort of little things like Cain kills Abel, and then Cain gets banished from the family, and then he goes to start a new family. With who? That's one of those things that's underneath your nose that it's like, hello, McFly. It's right there. But nobody thinks about it. There's actually more bubble popping type stuff in the New Testament. So what I'm doing is inviting you to that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk more about Mary. Like I said, I'm going to sort of start some conversations now without necessarily completing them. The first half, before the break this afternoon, is going to be about the story. The second half is about what's actually there in the teachings outside of the story itself. What was the point? What's the message? What really matters? And that's why I'm here on this earth right now at this time, is to let everybody know, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Because that's what a lot of people want to do. They want to say, oh, the whole thing's a farce. It's all a conspiracy theory. But it's time for us to grow up. Literally. To step back, let the Jesus story grow up, and let ourselves grow up. And let go of all the frames and all the masks and all of the stuff, the details and the fences. And start actually coming together. It's time. But it's not easy in any way, because we have to eat our own mask in the process, I guess you could say. So I just want to say thank you. I've put you in a blender for the past 30 minutes. You can breathe now. Thank you for your openness, and I'll see you in a little while.